This is my digestive activity video. Okay. As soon as you put food in your mouth, the digestive process begins. As you chew and break down your food into smaller pieces, increasing the surface area available to enzymes. Saliva contains the enzyme salivary amylase, which breaks down starch into small sugar molecules. Food remains in the mouth only for a short time, so about 5% of starch is completely broke down. Salivary amylase continues to work until strong acid content of the stomach deactivates it. To start the process of fat digestion, the cells at the base of the tongue secrete another enzyme, lingual lipase. The overall impact of the lingual lipase on fat digestion, though, is small. Saliva and other fluids, including mucus blend with the food to form a bolus, is a chewed, moistened lump of food that is soft and easy to swallow. When you swallow the bolus, it slides past your epiglottis. So your bolus slides past your epiglottis. A valve-like flap of tissue that closes off your air passage so that you don't choke. The bolus then moves rapidly through the epiglottis to the stomach, where it is digested further. So, moves past the epiglottis to the stomach. The bolus enters the stomach through the esophageal sphincter, also called the cardiac sphincter, which immediately closes to keep the bolus from sliding back into the epiglottis. Quick and complete closure by the esophageal sphincter is essential to prevent acidic stomach contents from backing up into the esophagus, causing pain and tissue damage called heartburn. Hydraulic acid, which is hydraulic acid right here. Hydraulic acid makes the stomach contents extremely acidic, dropping the pH to 2 compared with a neutral pH of 7. This acidic environment kills many pathogenic bacteria that might have been ingested, and also acids in digestive protein. Mucus secreted by stomach cells coats the stomach lining to protect the cells from damage, and strong gastric juice. Hydraulic acid works in protein digestion in 2 ways. First, it demolishes the functional 3-dimensional shape of proteins, which is that, unfolding them into linear chains. This increases their vulnerability to attacking enzymes. Second, it promotes the breakdown of proteins, converting the enzyme persicure in pepsinogen to activate form pepsin. So, yeah, there's the pepsin right there. Pepsin then begins breaking the links in protein chains, cutting dietary proteins into smaller and smaller pieces. Stomach cells also produce an enzyme called gastric lipase. It has a minor role in digestion of lipids, specifically triglycerides, with an abundance in short-chain fatty acids. And there's the triglyceride Gastrin, another component of gastric juice, is a hormone that stimulates gastric section and motility. Intrinsic factor is a substance necessary for absorption of vitamin B12 that occurs further down the GI tract near the end of the small intestine. In the absence of intrinsic factor, only about 1/5 of the ingested vitamin B12 is absorbed. So there's the small intestine ending is right there. After swallowing, salivary amylase continues to digest carbohydrates. An important action of the stomach is to continue mixing food with the GI secretions to produce the semi-liquid chyme, which is right there. To accomplish this, the stomach has an extra layer of diagonal muscles. These, along with circular and longitudinal muscles, contract and relax to mix food completely. When the chyme is ready to leave the stomach, about 30 to 40% of carbohydrates, 10 to 20% of protein, and less than 10% of fat has been digested. The stomach slowly releases the chyme through the pyloric sphincter, which is this, into the small intestine. The pyloric sphincter then closes to prevent the chyme from returning into the stomach. The stomach normally empties in 1 to 4 hours, depending on the types of amounts of food eaten. Carbohydrates speed through the stomach in the shortest time, followed by protein and fat, thus the higher fat content of a meal and longer it will take to leave the stomach. The small intestine completes the digestion of protein, fat, and nearly all carbohydrates. It absorbs most nutrients. So there's what's in the small intestine are those three. Most digestion occurs in the duodenum, where the small intestine receives digestive secretions from the pancreas, gallbladder, and its own glands. The remainder of the small intestine primarily absorbs previously digested nutrients. In the duodenum, which is right there, bicarbonate from the pancreas neutralizes the acidic chyme from the stomach. The slow delivery of the chyme through the pyloric sphincter allows the chyme to adequately be neutralized. So pyloric sphincter into the duodenum. The stimulus for the release of the bicarbonate from the pancreas is the hormone secretin. Okay. The specific signal comes from the intestinal hormone cholecystokinin. Lipids ordinarily do not mix with water, but bile acts as an emulsifier, keeping liquid molecules mixed with watery chyme and digestive secretions. Without the action of bile, lipids might not come into contact with pancreatic lipase, and digestion would be incomplete. With the pancreatic lipase is this one. With the pancreatic and intestinal enzymes working together, digestion processes nicely, leaving a smaller protein, carbohydrate, and lipid compounds ready for absorption. Other nutrients such as vitamins, minerals, and cholesterol are not digested and generally are absorbed unchanged. Just as the small intestine accomplishes much of the nutrient digestion, it is also responsible for most nutrient absorption. Its structure makes the process of absorption, efficient and complete. So the small intestine does a lot of the absorbing. As the nutrients journey through the small intestine, they are trapped in the folds of the projections of the intestinal wall and absorbed through the microvilli into the lining of the cells. Depending on your diet, each day the small intestine will absorb several hundred grams of carbohydrates, 60 or more grams of fat, 50 to 100 grams of amino acid, and 7 to 8 liters of water. Water-soluble nutrients are absorbed directly into the bloodstream. When the chyme is completed, its 3 to 10 hour journey through the small intestine, it passes through the ileosacral valve, the connection to the large intestine. So it passes through this valve down here into the large intestine. The chyme's next stop is the large intestine. This tube is about 5 feet long and includes the cecum, the cecum, the colon, and the rectum, and anal canal. As chyme fills the cecum, a local reflex signals the ileosacral valve to close, preventing the material from re-entering the ileum of the small intestine. The colon dehydrates the watery chyme, removing and absorbing most of the remaining fluid, or the approximately 1,000 milliliters of material that enters the large intestine. Only about 150 milliliters remain for excretion as our feces down here. Okay, and in our mouth we have our salivary amylase, which breaks down a lot of our food and helps us to digest. In the small intestine, we have the pancreatic amylase, and our microvilli contain the maltase, sucrase, and lactase. Okay. The mouth, our salivary glands also contain the lingual lipase. Our stomach contains gastric lipase. Excuse me. Our small intestine contains pancreatic lipase. Right here. Oops. Okay. And stomach acid unfolds proteins, exposing them to the digestive enzymes. Pepsin begins protein digestion. So there's our proteins. In the small intestine, enzymes break down protein to individual amino acids and small peptides. So there's our peptides and amino acids. Intestinal cells absorb amino acids and peptides. These cells finish splitting peptides into individual amino acids. Amino acids are absorbed into the capillaries and villi. Those are those two. Amino acids travel into the bloodstream to tissues as needed, and the liver can use amino acids to manufacture a variety of important substances. Once proteins, so our proteins, reach the stomach, the acid and enzyme pepsin, so there's our pepsin, in the stomach break down the proteins into smaller peptides in the duodenum. The enzyme trypsin, so our duodenum, the trypsin, and the chymotrypsin also break down the proteins and peptides into even smaller peptides. And finally, the carboxypeptides and enzyme breaks down the peptides into individual amino acids. Glucose, fructose, and galactose, so there's our glucose, fructose, and galactose. They are all transported out of the enterocyte through another hexose transporter in the basolateral membrane. Cellulose, there's our cellulose. Cellulose consists of a long polymer chains of glucose units, so there's one of our chains, a segment of it. Amylopectin, that is right up here, is secreted by the pancreas to digest starch. And cholesterol, which is right here, is helpful for lipase to come in and digest. So our lipase. And our fatty acid right here is formed by fermentation of sugars. So here is and there's our lactose, sucrose, and maltose.